Good morning. So, yesterday we learnt firstly the first daya that the Rambam brings, which is the Das Torah on the origin of the world. Notice that the Rambam has shifted somewhat the emphasis on the fourth Ikar, from Kadmus to creation ex nihilo. And this is the thrust and the focus. And remember, and he said here that this is, just remind ourselves of the importance of it. At the end of, it's on the bottom of page 4, he wrote in Meira, V'hu yisoid Torahs Moshe Rabbeinu b'li sofek, v'hu shenis li yisoid ha-yichud. He really is going to town to emphasize the centrality, the importance, how fundamental it is to believe in this idea. Creation ex nihilo puts Hashem conceptually outside of the constraints and the systems and the reality that we perceive. He is, by definition now, outside of and above and the creator of everything, including time and space, from nothing, from absolute nothingness. That concept is absolutely fundamental for the Rambam. We're now going to learn we actually learnt, did we finish? Did we finish
the Das Sheni?
Did we not even get to the Das Shlishi? Okay, so then he brings Plato, and then he brings Aristotle. That's Das Sheni and Shlishi. I don't want to spend too much time on them, to be honest with you, because I think it's just good that you are aware of them, although fascinatingly, the Rambam then goes on. This is Chelik Beis Perek Yud Gimel. He then spends another 11 prokim discussing Aristotle's ideas. Not agreeing, but he spends, and this is fascinating, he then spends 11 prokim of Moira Nevuchim. That's a substantial amount.
Does it come over to you as a lesson in what to tell the Apikoros?
I'm not sure that we can look at it that way, purely because the methodology and the way to approach an 11th century apostate in Cordova is not going to be the same as some wannabe atheist in Berlin in 2025 by a zillion miles. And therefore, there are things that we can learn. Remember when we learned the letter of the Ramban, which was a masterclass in approach. Some things are universal, the humility, and actually this is an important segue. When we're going to be doing a little bit of work, and I'm going to expose you a little bit, I apologize in advance, to Dawkins and the so-called horsemen of the apocalypse of the new atheists, Dawkins, Dennett, Hitchens, Sam Harris, and Jerry Coyne and the others. And if you go on YouTube or whatever and you read or you see some of their interactions, there's one fascinating thing comes across, and that is the cynical, mocking, arrogant demeanor, making fun. And that's a real giveaway. It's a real giveaway. We'll come back to that. Whereas notice the Ramban, and here the Rambam is arguing with Aristotle. But he has covered for him. He says that the things which are tachas hagalgal he's correct, and he reached a very high madrega in Chochmah, just below Ruach HaKodesh, etc. But he's fundamentally arguing with him and Plato, but he gives them basic respect. And that's an interesting approach. Okay, but let's go on. Hadas Hasheni. Who das kol mi shemanu einenu inyanoi v'ra'inu dvarav min ha-philosophim v'zeh shem erim ki min ha-sheker. Yes, we spoke about this. In Plato's mind, it isn't an imperfection of Hashem to be unable to create something ex nihilo. It is an absurdity. In the same way we would have no expectation of Hashem to create a square triangle. Remember, we did do this. He says it's no says Plato, who is very much taken with forms. Remember we discussed that as well, Platonic forms. And therefore he says it's not a problem. It's not an imperfection of Hashem not to be able, says Plato, to do the absurd and the impossible. And in his mind, the creation of anything ex nihilo, or for that matter, the ability of something that exists to become, to move from existence to total non-existence is equally logically absurd, and therefore there was whatever it was, whether it's a huli or an ethereal matter, primordial matter, there was something, and Hashem then is fundamentally, let me just get the, Hashem is fundamentally a craftsman who uses this primordial matter to bring stuff into existence, to fashion it, and to give it form and shape and identity. That's in a nutshell. There's a side show here which I'm not going to go into, but I'll just mention it, and that is whether Shomayim, about the nature of Shomayim, or whether they will exist forever, etc. Okay, but that's just that we should be aware of this concept. Okay. Now, one thing I do want to point out, and this is really important, just because remember, both Plato and Aristotle, the Rambam informed us, are both believers. They're not atheists. They believe in a God. They very possibly don't agree on the capacity of Hashem. I want to point something out to you, please, and this is really, it's really important. Go down on we are on page 5, go down sort of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, about 12 lines. Ulezei, at the end of the line, Ulezei Ya'aminu. At the end of the line, Ulezei Ya'aminu.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Got it? Eli? About 12 lines down, end of the line, Ulezei Ya'aminu. You're going 12 lines up. 12 lines down.
12 lines down. Okay.
Down, from the top.
From this stuff.
Down. 12 lines up would be, I'm sorry, maybe it's my language. Ulezei Ya'aminu. Got it? Okay. Ulezei Ya'aminu. This is important. I would highlight this line or two. Ulezei Ya'aminu, and therefore they believe, sheyesh chomer echad nimtza kadmoin kekadmus ha'eloya. There is some pre-existing primordial matter of some sort, which is kadmoin. It's there right at the beginning, and its kadmus is kekadmus ha'eloya. Its antiquity, its age, its provenance is as old as Hashem himself, so to speak. But he adds, Lo yimotzei hu zulas hachomer, v'lo hachomer yimotzei zulasoi. Hashem does not exist without this chomer, and the chomer does not exist without him. However, now that is very challenging philosophically, theologically, because then is Hashem no longer non-contingent existence? Does that mean, is Plato suggesting that the existence of Hashem is, chas v'shalom, dependent upon the existence of this matter? Who brought this matter into existence? We're getting ourselves tied up in knots, so the Rambam clarifies. He says, so in terms of kadmos, they are kind of at a level, yeah? But he is not to be found without the chomer, nor the chomer to be found without him, but but of course, they don't believe that this chomer is as important, lofty, whatever word you want to use, as Hashem, avolhu sibas metziusai. Now, I think this means that Hashem is the cause. Actually, you know what? Now that I'm looking at it again, I went over it again last night. Sorry, I just don't want to get this wrong. You've got to get your apicorsus right as well. Yeah, you must. Who 27? Yes, Hashem. Good. So Kapach has thought so. I just got for a second. I got a. Hashem, when it says who sibas metziusai, it means Hashem is the sibba, is the cause of the existence of this primordial matter.
So we do say that Hashem created the.
Well,
So they say.
well, no, Avi's got a good point. We are in a little bit of a paradoxical loop because he says there's no Hashem without this matter. There's no matter without this Hashem.
But we
And
don't
the
say
cad
that.
and pardon?
We don't say that. I'm just
No, this is
I
Plato.
said-
Yeah.
I said it's
This is
Plato.
absolutely, this is Plato. We're discussing Plato, 100%. The cadmus of this matter, primordial matter, is kadmuso yizbarach, on the one hand. On the other hand, he's the cause of it. That would appear to be a real paradox, and I don't know how he resolves it. To be honest with you, I'm not going to spend any time on it either. It's not my focus. But if the Rambam felt the need to acquaint us with this idea, then we're just going to acquaint ourselves with the idea. We're certainly not going to spend significant time. I'm not in academia, and we're not going to spend significant time on that. 1 second, please. Fine. Okay, but that line in Plato is or Rambam's reading of Plato is very important. Let's go down to the bold bit here. And even within the Platonic school of thought, there are Neoplatonists and there are all sorts and weird and wonderful creatures of whom I don't know all that much, to be honest. But he says, and they just subdivide into splinter groups. He says, and there's actually very little merit in mentioning and acquainting us with their subgroups. I've given you the highlights. Platon gamkin zuhi amonosoi. This is what here he tells us. I told you it was Plato right from the beginning of this paragraph, but only now here does the Rambam tell us this is what Plato believed. Atotimtso Aristo yisaper olav b'sefer Hashema shehu mamin rotzalema a Platon. Aristotle tells us about Plato that, because of course he was his Rebbe. He tells us that Plato believes that the Shomayim ohavim nifsadim, that Shomayim are subject to decay, entropy, etc., etc. Timaeus, this is the famous another work by Aristotle. And then Aristotle argues with him. Go to the end of this. We believe, the Rambam reinforces at the end of his quoting of Plato, we believe that the Shomayim, like everything else, is not made of a different matter, or, well, here we get into difficulty later, but
Plato would say that was never the case. Or,
it would, a Shomayim certainly. But don't worry about that. The only thing I would like us to take away from Plato is the idea that he rejects any creation ex nihilo. That's the key idea. The other one is a sub-idea and it is connected, but we're not going to deal with it. And the Rambam at the end says, Eino inyan kain, she'anachnu na'amin hayos hashomayim lo midavar. Shomayim came about from nothing, from lo midavar, from nothing. El acha he'eder hamuchlet ex nihilo. V'hu yamin, and he believes, shehim nimtsoim, they came about, v'hoivim midavar, they came from something. There was some pre-existing.
What do we mean with Shemayim? Spiritual or sky?
Anything and everything. Remember? Everything. Remember he said Malachim, Galgalim, we saw it yesterday. That's the end of Plato. Goodbye. Next, Hadas Hashlishi. The third one, Hudas Aristo. V'hanim shochim acharav u'mefarish svarav. V'zeh shehu oimer masha omruhu anshe kat. V'hu. So he agrees with Plato in one idea. Aristotle is of the opinion that there is no such thing as creating something from absolute nothing. Shomayim, and it's debatable what he means by that, but Shomayim is not subject to decay. Shomayim is eternal. יחשב שזה הנמצא כולוי על מה שהיא עליו, לא יסר ולא יוסר היוסר כן. It is not, it always was and always will be. ושהדבר הקיים, and something that exists, אשר לא ייפול תחת הווי וההפסד, הוא השמיים, לא יסר היוסר כן. Shamayim, and leave for a moment what he means by that, but he is saying that Aristotle says Shamayim is something that is not subject to decay, and therefore is eternal, and therefore v'shehazman v'hatenua oilamiyim tmidiyim loyhovim v'loynefsadim. Time itself, says Aristotle, is not a creation. Time is eternal, always was. Shamayim always was, time always was. Now, hold on a second. He told us that Aristotle believes in God. So who is Aristotle's God? Go down to 5 lines up. Middle of the line, Va'omar. 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 And Aristo says, and then the Rambam in bracket says, he didn't write it in so many words. This is what emerges from his viewpoint. Shehu Mishaer Hanimna Etzloi. And this is very important. And this actually is challenging, if I may say, even for us. But he says he does not accept that at a certain point within time, remember, according to Aristotle, time is a constant. It's not a creation. It's interesting. Science now tells us he was wrong, but we'll come back to that. He says, within time, you therefore have to Aristotle now has a problem. He believes in God. He has to place God within somewhere along the time continuum, and then say that at that moment in time, Hashem desired to create. And that, according to Aristotle, is an impossibility. You cannot attribute to Hashem at a point in time a rotzen, to be that Hashem would be now mechadesh a rotzen. Now he wishes to create. Because it has to be a now, because time is a constant for Aristotle, right? Therefore he says, ha'olam midatei. The Rambam says, I'm not quoting him directly, but this is what emerges from his perspective. Ha'olam midatei, shehu mishar hanimna etzloi. It is unacceptable, untenable in the thought world of Aristotle. Sheyishtane leboire rotzai. That is a shinui for Hashem at a point in time to desire to create. That means 5 minutes ago he didn't want to. Hashem is a constant. You can't. He has a problem. Anihu lo shinisi. I'm sure Aristotle didn't quote the posuk, but you get the idea. You can't say sheyishtane leboire rotzai or yischadesh lo chayfetz. V'shekol zeh hamatzios al mashehu olav. Of course, everything that we see, Hashem himtzio b'ritzoinoi. Hashem brought into existence. It's true. Avaloi pa'al achar haheder. He, like Plato, he agrees that it's not ex nihilo. In the same way that it is untenable to posit that Hashem should change himself. Says Aristotle, it is equally absurd and unacceptable this is Aristotle. This is what we do. That was Plato. This is Aristotle. This is the Rambam explaining Aristotle. Let's be very clear. Yeah? So similarly, he says, Aristotle is of the opinion that it is untenable to say that Hashem at a point in time is mechadesh echayfetz. Now he wants. Kafi mashehu ato kain hoya b'ma shaloisar v'chein yeh adayad. Therefore, we have to say that I don't know how he actually gets out of this. We have a problem because time is a constant. You can't say that at some point in time Hashem decided to create. So you must say that there are things which are eternal. Shamayim is eternal. Yes, it came about through Hashem, but it's eternal. Though that Aristotle is mechalek between me'al hagalgal and mitachas legalgal. Shamayim and that which is underneath. There is Shomayim and things that are above, whatever that means, the Galgal was always. Yes, as a result of Hashem, but time was also constant. There's a lot of paradoxes there. And I'm not going to unravel them. Go to the second line. We're now on page 6. Aval misha lo yoda metzios Hashem yizbarach. Aval choshav shehadvorim b'hiskabetu b'sparad kvi amikra v'she'in shom mani v'leisei metzios v'hu apikoros. Says the Rambam, Kamei Yisaper Alexander. He said, I have taken time, says the Rambam, to download to you the viewpoints of Plato and Aristotle. But he says, however, apikoros, those who don't believe in Hashem, or they think that things always were just like that, just because, right? And there's no oversight. He says, such apikoros, such as Alexander and others, he says, I'm not even going to bother mentioning them. I am not going to even spend time talking about them. I have already demonstrated to you the existence of Hashem. And therefore, I've only mentioned the opinions of people who accept this idea. Therefore, it's a waste of time. I've spent time explaining to you Plato's ideas. The ein hefresh etzleinu. This is important. The ein hefresh etzleinu bein mishayamin shahashamayim hovim midovo behechrach v'nifsodim el dovo. There's no difference, says the Rambam, in my mind, between somebody who believes that Shamayim came about from something else and can disappear, or the belief of Aristotle that he believes that they always were and they can't disappear. Because he said to me there's no difference, he's saying. Why? Because the perspective of Yiddishkeit, of Judaism, anybody who has any claim to be a follower of Moshe or Avraham Avinu, omnam hu ha'emunah she'ein dovar kadmain im Hashem yizbarach. There is no primordial matter, anything with Hashem. Hashem is the very first thing ever. Number one, unlike Plato, Plato and Aristotle, who both believe that it is a logical absurdity, to believe that Hashem that creation ex nihilo is a logical absurdity. He says, no, it isn't. It's not a logical absurdity. They say, says that, I'm sorry, it's not impossible, it's not an absurdity. Some people think that it has to be so. Now he says, says the Rambam, I am now going to explain, I'm now going to spend 11 prokim delving into Aristotle's proofs and why I don't agree with him. And you'll be happy to know we're not going to do any of that. Although there are some selected quotes later on which are useful for us. So, I hope that wasn't too painful.
I have a question regarding the end. I'm not sure I understand the end when he says ve'en hefresh etzleinu. He means that we don't make this different. It doesn't make it. Does he mean that
they're both equally unacceptable to us?
Exactly.
That's what he's saying. That's exactly correct.
Could there could be like one sentence the view of Aristotle and Plato?
What they have in common. What they have, I'm going to send you. I've actually got it somewhere. I'm going to send it to you in a simple table form. I've got it very, very straightforward, very simple. Because I'm not going to share with you, but I went down a bit of a rabbit hole. Just because that's me, and I collected a lot of fascinating papers from academia, as in the website and JSTOR and various other places. Just because I have an interest in these things, I probably shouldn't. Ranging from Ravitsky, Avi Ravitsky, if you know who that is, and you've got Yishai Leibovitz, and you've got all sorts of very, very interesting, fascinating. One thing was really interesting to me to see that in the world of academia, you see how many hits you get if you Maimonides, and he is a towering figure. To this day, in modern philosophy.
Who's that?
Maimonides,
Right.
the Rambam.
Yeah.
He is and they argue over nuances in his. Was he a Neoplatonist? And there's even a whole fascinating thing. I don't know if I should say it, but the Rambam writes, in his Hakdama, he writes that he says, "I have written this work. It's very, very interesting. Although the Rambam was very humble." But he writes with a certain tkifus in his introduction, and he writes that I wrote this work very carefully. Remember, this is towards the end of his life. I wrote this work very carefully, and you will sometimes find contradictions within my work. And then he gives 7 categories of contradiction and why they are justified. And it's absolutely mind-blowing. And there are hints in a number of places, not just in Moira, but in others, where he hints to, it's what's called in the world of academia an esoteric rather than exoteric, an esoteric reading of the Rambam, where he was hinting to other stuff. And the suggestion is possibly that either he was aware of Kabbalah, which is really not so simple, and probably not the Pashtus, but he was hinting to there's another layer of being able to read within the Rambam and resolve some of the contradictions, and he was hinting to a much more esoteric reading and understanding of everything. And it goes down even to the Vilna Gaon and his famous comment about him and the philosophy and what was going on there, possibly a machlekes internally between the Talmidei Hagra to, I wouldn't say whitewash, but to see the Gra's criticism of the Rambam, which was almost certainly was not a fake. His famous comment, you know that comment in Yoreh De'ah, the famous comment? You know what I'm referring to?
And demons and everything?
No, when he criticizes the Rambam.
I only heard it paraphrased.
Okay, so then
but he spent too much time.
Ha-philosophia ha'arura hita
yeah.
osoi.
Right.
The cursed philosophy led him astray.
Don't exist.
And then, but that's the Lashon. Ha-philosophia ha'arura hita osoi. But there are subsequent, very, very interesting. Maybe we'll do. Well, how am I getting? Okay, never mind. You know what? Let me stop here. It's
interesting.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. Even some of the quotes from the Leshem about the Rambam are again hinting to his understanding of the Rambam. There was deeper stuff going on.
I mean that in the Talmidei Hagra and the Leshem being in that tradition also.
Possibly.
As the last big Litvish Mekuba.
Yeah. That maybe the opposition is not as black and white as it would appear to be.
Right.
Number one, a letter from the Vilna Gaon, for example, ordering a copy of Aristotle's writings. It's
more like geometric.
I have to check. I'm not sure it is. No, I think it was more. I have to check also. But I have to be careful, especially what goes on in film as well. So So this is really this is it for the moment on this. Let's summarize, Rabbi Isai, plenary. Let's summarize. The Rambam is of the opinion very clearly, without going into all the details of the rejection of those who say that Hashem Chas v'Shalom pre-exists with some primordial matter. No, there was He'eder HaMuchlet. The Rambam writes very clearly, this is right up there with the unity and uniqueness of God. And of course they are conceptually, they're bedfellows, because Hashem you cannot categorize him. He cannot be seen within the ontology or within the categorize him within any other system he is outside of. He brings into existence from He'eder HaMuchlet, utter, total, absolute nothing. There's nothing other than Hashem. He then brings time and obviously space and everything into existence when B'Ratzona Yisbarach. And that therefore puts a universe a perspective of that being the universe is a whole different universe. It's his world, it's here for a purpose, and we need to, the sooner we get with the program, the better, kind of thing. And that's why it's so central. Okay? Having done that, we will now move on to, let's do some science. Let's contrast it with some modern science, cosmology. Actually, we'll do this. We'll do the slide that's up there, and I don't know how I'm going to do this for the. Let's see if this works. If I can turn, it's not going to allow me to turn this round, is it? Or will it? Probably not. No, it's not going to allow me to turn this round. No, that's not it. That's just to take a photo. I'm just therefore going to have to stop this, and okay.